First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Tim Anderson for allowing me to talk in front of you about a sensitive world issue that we are all aware of. On all media channels, we are exposed to the term ISIS, which various perspectives being presented, whether it's being a biased opinion or a natural coverage. I'm standing before you to speak about the fundamental ideology of that group, ISIS. It's just a new name for a group that has been developed. The ideology roots came from corrupted Islamic school of thought that goes back to Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, was born in 1263, who is the creator of Takfiris, meaning sectarian school of thought. That label, others kafir, it meaning infidel. One of his famous fatwa or degree is that if you don't call a Muslim Shia an infidel, you are then considered an infidel. Takfir or rejection developed as soon as the Prophet passed away. I came to this later in my speech. In the early 1700s, one of the elite British spies in the Ottoman Empire, at that time called Mr. Hamfer, wrote in his memos, when the unity of Muslims is broken and common sympathy among them is impaired, their forces will be dissolved, and thus we shall easily destroy them. We English people have to make mischief and arouse schism in all colonies in order that we live in welfare and luxury. This was Wikipedia. Mr. Hamfer's first goal was to promote innovation disorder in Islam by creating Wahhabism after he found a younger person called Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. Hamfer begins to corrupt and flatter Abdul Wahhab until he became submissive and decided to sectarian religious affiliation, which later was supported by the family of Saud, whom are the rulers of Saudi Arabia today. Abdul Wahhab and his followers have destroyed many holy shrines in Medina, including the holy shrines of 4 grandsons of the Prophet Muhammad, claiming that whoever visits a holy shrine is idolater and needs to be reprimanded and submit to punishment. Since the establishment of that sectarian religious affiliation, they claim that they are the people of unification and all other religious beliefs, whether being Muslims or Christian or Jewish, are idolaters. The use of terror in that school of thought goes back to the early history of Islam, when Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, refused to pay allegiance to the corrupted ruler Yazid bin Muawiyah. The tyrant ruler Yazid ordered to kill Imam Hussein and his family. The historical tragedy of Karbala in Iraq in year 61, Imam Hussein and his family, with 70 companions, stood against 30,000 strong Umayyad army. The battle ended with the martyrdom of Imam Hussein and all his companions and a large number of his family by brutally beheading the grandson of the Prophet, and his head was sent as a gift to Yazid in Damascus. That's where the cloud curtain comes from. The massacre of Imam Hussein added a significant passion element to the Shia tradition, similar to the Christian reverence to Christ's passion on the cross. Imam Hussein to the Shia is a marker of resistance and justice in the face of oppression. And the slaughter of a human being and beheading is a part of a sectarian religious adopted by Wahhabism, who followed the Yazid traditions. What the world is being exposed to, especially in the West, has shocked and horrified many viewers from around the world when watching the beheading of 2 American journalists, which I personally view to have been fabricated. We have, as the Shia Muslims, have been horrified from the moment of learning about the Battle of Karbala on a daily basis. We are reminded of that tragic battle by thousands of video clips that are being uploaded on websites by ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Jabhat al-Nusra and all other Wahhabi terrorist groups, showing how they slaughter thousands of Shia Muslims and Sunnis as well who rejected their affiliation. One massacre that haunts me every day is the incident when ISIS entered Mosul, Iraq, and 1,700 young Iraqi Shia from the Sparta Air Force came. They had captured 2,500 new army recruits from Sparta base in Tikrit and separated the Sunnis and freed them and slaughtered all the Shia, which was 1,700. Throughout the media, we are not only exposed to the name ISIS, we also hear of Al-Qaeda, Al-Jabhat al-Nusra, and other groups. The question is, are they all of the same religious affiliation? Yes. The answer is yes. And I want to mention a few terrorist organizations that all adopt Wahhabism as their school of thought. Number one, Al-Qaeda worldwide. Second, Boko Haram in Nigeria. Askar Tiba in Pakistan and Kashmir. Abu Sayyaf in Philippines. Ansar al-Islam and Fath al-Islam in Lebanon. Muhammad Army in Syria. Islamic Army in Syria. Tawheed and Hijrah in Egypt. Harakat al-Mujahideen in Iraq. And many more terrorist groups to be mentioned in Lebanon and Syria and Iraq, through to African countries and other Middle Eastern countries, all adopting the Wahhabi school of thought. One shocking report says there is 1,600 different terrorist groups in Syria only, from 88 countries. All these terrorist groups, once you investigate, you will find USA intelligence agency have created and supported them. They have created Al-Qaeda to fight the Russian occupation of Afghanistan. They called them Mujahideen at that time, financially supported by rich oil Gulf states. After they pulled out of the Russian troops from Afghanistan, Taliban Islamic forces took over Afghanistan and threatened to invade neighboring countries. That is when USA masterminded September 11 to eventually enter Afghanistan and later on into Iraq, using the notion of chemical weapons in order to invade it. USA is now using the same lie and same tactic to invade Syria and Iraq after the media coverage of the two Americans that were beheaded, and I'm expecting the same Hollywood drama of execution that will show us the execution of rich journalists to get the rich population and the politicians behind the American aggression against Middle Eastern countries. I wrote my article last week, and as I predicted and expected, the British journalist has been executed on Sunday to complete the drama show. If they have Italian or German or Australian in their hand, they will do the same drama show, which is, I still strongly believe, all the videos of execution are all prepared to make logical reason for USA forces to enter Syria. Last week, Mr. Obama called for a world coalition to fight ISIS. And I said he said he must destroy ISIS and replace them by moderate Sunni is a very dangerous step. He added, the mission could take up to 3 years to complete. It means the USA wants to make a new country to be under the ruling of allied Sunnis and supported by Saudi Arabia to cut the resistance line from Iran to Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine, as Jay mentioned. The aim is to protect the state of Israel after being defeated in Lebanon in year 2000, year 2006, and Gaza 2008, 2014. Basically, USA and their allies want to step into Syria from the door of ISIS. 3 years of terrorism war on Syria, which has failed to overthrow the Syrian government and replace it with a friendly government that supports Israel and become enemy of the Lebanese resistance. We all know that all arms and military supplies that have been provided to Islamic terrorist groups in Syria has fallen in the hand of ISIS. USA administration has vowed to finance the terrorist groups to topple the government of Syria, but they didn't have the fund. Therefore, they supported ISIS to enter Iraq and take the province of Mosul and steal the banks. The total cash was over $3 billion, plus they put their hand on the best military weapon that has been untouched and paid by the Iraqi government. USA did not have to spend a single dollar on that plot. USA intervention in Iraq and Syria is another invasion and aggression. Hillary Clinton a former United States Secretary of State and US Senator in 2012 admits and said the people we are fighting today, we funded them 20 years ago. The whole show that is the USA has failed to destroy the Syrian government because of the strong support from Syrian allies to mention Russia, Iran, Iraq, China, and most important, Hezbollah in Lebanon, who involved militarily 2 years after the conflict in Syria and after hundreds of thousands of terrorists enter Syria from 88 countries. The interference of Hezbollah has changed the history and turned the table around the plotters. Hezbollah knows well if Syria falls in the hands of those terrorist Takfiris, first thing they do, they will enter Lebanon and slaughter Muslim Shia and Christians and even Muslim Sunnis who don't agree with them. All Takfiri groups have objection towards other religious affiliation, refuse any other religious ideology, and are driven by gaining power through terrorism, destroying the purity of Islam, hijacking the peace and harmony of Islamic religion, creating enemies towards Muslims and Islam, destroy the power of the Muslim nation in order to save the unlawful state of Israel. With my speech to be coming to the end, I would like to send a message to the Australian nation and Australian government. ISIS is ground in Australia and being taught under the umbrella of hundreds of Wahhabi sectarian schools throughout Australia, funded by Saudi Arabia government and their millions of dollars as donations. The Wahhabi scholars are spreading their ideology freely in all mosques and centers and hidden places, and the schools under the rules of freedom of speech. You have to find a way to stop this, their ideology spreading like a cancer and disease in our community and nation. To know more about how their supporters in Australia and worldwide are adopting ISIS action, look at the comments they leave on social network sites like Facebook and Twitter. They all prize ISIS and other terrorist groups and wish to establish ISIS in Australia. As I mentioned before, I wrote my speech last week. Today, we woke up with national news of multi-raids by anti-terrorism and federal police on many Sydney and the Brisbane suburbs, homes, and detained many suspects of young Australian planning a terrorist act in Australia's soil. We hope these raids will secure the security of Australia and not to justify the military intervention with USA in Iraq and Syria. I believe if the Iraqi army get the right military equipment, they can defeat and destroy ISIS without international intervention. This is a brief introduction about the roots of the Takfiri sectarian terrorism group and the intervention of Western powers and their objective. Thank you for taking time to listen to me.
Thank you, Hussein.